Mrs. Kramer?
Here.
Mrs. Lane? Here. Mrs. Rich?
Here.
Mrs. Gallagher?
Here.
Mr. Kraftcheck? Mr. Parzak?
Here.
The meeting is now open. Adequate notice of the meeting was provided by posting a copy of the time and place on the municipal clerk's bulletin board and mailing a copy of same to the press and the Cape County Herald on January 4th, 2018. Will everyone please rise to salute the flag? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. First up on the agenda, Administration and Finance, Mrs. Lane.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. First of all, I'd like to remind everyone that Employee Recognition Day is the 18th, and that's when we celebrate our employees. I think it's going to be a really good day. I think we'll have a lot of fun, games, food, et cetera. So I hope all of council can make it. And then before we go into the reads, why don't we do, Jill, the employees with their reports?
Okay, first, we'll start off with the engineer's report.
Okay, thank you. I have several updates on capital improvement projects from Mayor and Council. The first one is the 95th Street bathroom renovation project, which is currently advertised for public bidding. We have a non-mandatory pre-bid meeting, which is scheduled for tomorrow, and the bid opening is scheduled for May 25th. Next, the 94th Street and 114th Street bulkhead replacement project is still in design and permitting phase and is on target for construction in fall of this year. Similarly, we have been recently authorized to start design for the 82nd Street tennis court building, and that project is also scheduled for fall of this year. Lastly, our office has met with the Public Works and Utility Committees to develop the 2018 Utility and Road Program. Discussion on these streets and authorization of our proposal is scheduled for today's meeting. In regards to the Marina Boat Ramp Flood Mitigation Project, we provided a comprehensive report on this matter to the borough on April 6th. Our report contains 7 different options that include an analysis of flood mitigation effectiveness, construction cost estimates, environmental permitting considerations. As part of our analysis, we provide a conceptual design of what we call the relocated boat ramp that would run from east to west. We feel very confident, as a side note to all of this, that the construction options may be eligible for the special round of funding through the Cape May County Open Space Program this year. And you'll have 2 bites at that apple should you choose to pursue that, once in August and once in December. That is my report.
Okay, next, tax collector.
Good afternoon, everyone. Well, I think today was a good day to say that the doldrums of winter is definitely over. The borough is hopping. It's crazy downstairs. We're working on month-end tax payments. Even though we offer direct debit now and we had all those prepayments in December, people are still sending me money. They just love sending money to Stone Harbor. And of course, I'm taking it. So the August quarter is going to be real interesting. Many people aren't going to know anything at all for August. We're also doing meter readings right now. We're preparing our shut-off list. Shut-off date will be June 19th for anybody who owes prior year's balances. It mirrors the tax procedure. And with that, that's all I have. Anybody have questions? Okay, I'm going to go back downstairs to the craziness. Thank you.
Can I ask the engineer a question? I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, what?
Can I ask Mark a question?
Yes, you may.
You said that the bulkheads, 114th, and I forget the other street, are under design?
Design and permitting, correct.
And what height are we going to on those?
I was assuming we would go to the height you're going to go to.
Okay, so that's in the plans.
Good answer.
Okay,
Good answer.
Very nice.
Yes,
so
it
it's
is.
whatever height we end up with.
Right.
Right.
Yes. Okay, next, the tax assessor was taking care of 2 different departments at the moment, so the only thing she had to report was, as of today, there were 59 tax appeals. too bad, considering. Next is construction and zoning, and Mike will report on both because Ray is out doing inspections.
I don't have any of
That's okay.
Ray's. Yeah, I have nothing for Ray. I had approximately 50 inspections last month. Kind of went down a little bit. We had 2 new permits issued last month, and currently I have 2 new permits in my bin for review for this month, so it's slowed down a lot. The Reeds is currently under construction. The second floor walls are being installed right now. The Stone Harbor Pizza is framed. The exterior of the building is framed. And I assume that I haven't been there yet because I haven't done a framing inspection on it yet, but they're working on the inside mechanicals and all the framing interior. It definitely has slowed down a little bit as far as new home permits, and we'll see what happens with the process with the new ordinance, with the pilings and demolitions. We'll obviously see that slow down the next month, or they're going to try to jam them in before that starts. Other than that, I don't really have anything else.
Any questions?
Any questions?
I didn't ride by there. When is the overhang and the sidewalk going to be walkable around the Reeds on 97th and then 3rd Avenue?
I don't think they're going to install that until they get the second floor walls up and they get the planking done for the second floor and possibly the roof. And they won't need to put anything up until they do that.
I'm talking about walking on the sidewalk, physically pushing it back so you can walk on the sidewalk down 97th.
Yeah, they won't really need to put the scaffolding up until they get everything set. And then when they start working on the exterior of the building, that's when they'll have the issue with material and trying to keep people safe from any material falling.
Can you walk on the sidewalk there right now?
It's only about this big.
Yeah, on 3rd Avenue, it's kind of narrow. They have it pushed out.
And how about the 200 block?
97th Street's the same way.
Yeah, it's the same way.
There's sidewalk there, but not the entire
They-
sidewalk?
They still need that room because the utilities that are going in underground, they don't want to close it up and then open it back up. I think they want to get that finished. And what I'm trying to push, for them to do is to get all the concrete sidewalks done prior to putting the scaffolding up, so that's finished. Then when they put the scaffolding on top of it, it's at least done, and it's a clear, smooth surface for them, for people to walk, so. Yeah, I think they're probably the next 2 to 3 weeks, they're gonna get the scaffolding up there.
And then the entire sidewalk then will become available for
Should be, yeah.
pedestrians at that
Yeah,
point?
I would say at least 75 to 80% of it, yes,
Okay.
which it'll be a lot more, yeah. A lot more than it is now, yeah. They have to take some concrete up to do the utilities that are coming in.
Okay.
Still have to open some holes up, so.
I never see many people walking on that particular side. They're on the other side by Coffee. No, even when it was available, they would always walk on the Coffee Talk side.
Now, they're going to start soon.
Yeah.
They'll be here soon.
Yeah, the cranes and any of the delivery trucks always seem to just jam that whole thing up anyway. The crane's always parked on that one side for the steel construction and the wall installation. The planking that they set, those guys, they have to take the street every time anyway. And I would assume that they're probably going to have to close off 3rd Avenue for a portion of the planking for the next floor. So he's in coordination with the police department, I think, too, so.
And with the county on that.
Yeah.
Didn't we just get an alert that's going to be closed, 96th and 98th Street,
Is it Thursday or Friday?
Yes.
this week? Yeah.
Yeah, couple days, 2 days, I think.
Yeah, I won't be here Thursday or Friday. I'll be at a building safety conference in Atlantic City, and Ray will be out also, so we won't have anybody here. If we need anybody, I'll call John from.
I would assume that there'll be police traffic of some sort there, right? There'd be traffic posts
Yeah.
there, so somebody be keeping an eye on that, okay?
Yeah, we have John Tracy from Avalon on call if we need him, just in case anything happens. Actually, he might be going to the conference, too.
Yeah.
Yeah, everybody normally goes.
Keep your phone handy.
Yeah, I'll have it with me, yeah. If I have to run back, I'll run back.
Okay.
All right?
Thank you.
Sure.
Next up, CFO.
have two things to report. We got our audit finished from Fort Scott with no comments, but there'll be more on that to follow as you have to pass a resolution to accept it. And then the other thing is we rolled $4 million in CD at Sturdy Bank at 1.5%. So, yeah.
Good.
Borough Clerk?
Can I step back just one moment? You said 1.5?
Yes.
Okay.
The cash report for March. In the current fund, cash balance $2,873,158.81. The cash disbursements for the month, $2,031,360.85. In the Water and Sewer Department, in the checking account, $1,632,159.13, and the disbursements for the month, $103,756.83. The Borough Clerk's office for the month, total taken in, $18,833.54. That's all.
Planning Board report?
Planning Board actually had 2 meetings in April. That's the first time we've had 2 meetings, I think, in over a year. And the reason for the second meeting was there was an application, and the application ended up being canceled because it was incomplete. So we will be hearing that application in June. So following postponing till that application till June 11th, we've been beating to death outdoor dining, and we've had more discussion on that and how to facilitate outdoor dining for various restaurants, trying perhaps to have outdoor dining in that public right-of-way that's on the other side of the sidewalk in some kind of form or fashion, and restricting it in ways perhaps like not in the 200 block of 96th Street, perhaps having annual licensing, so as opposed to making full ordinance changes or asking for zoning changes. And it's one of those things that's going to be going back to the Planning Board Subcommittee to discuss, and we'll continue to discuss. And the Planning Board engineer will be taking a look around at where it might even be viable. So that was really the extent. That was old business we discussed, and there was no new business. And that's the extent of Planning Board.
Judy, so you said they're not contemplating having it in the 200 block. So where do they want it?
300 block.
Oh, it could be the 300 block, 3rd Avenue, 2nd Avenue. But because the thought process is if you can have it somehow in that public right-of-way on the other side of the sidewalk, there's just too many people on the 200 block to make it possible. But then if you go down to areas like Nemo's, Jay's on 3rd, Luciano's, you might have an area somehow where it's feasible. If it ends up not being feasible, then so be it. But we want to kind of try to make some kind of decision and either move forward with it or put it to bed. And Andrew Catanese had suggested that there be a way that you almost, you're licensed annually to be able to have, perhaps you're licensed for 2 tables, 3 tables, X amount of square footage, and then it could always be reviewed to see is there any kind of public safety issues? Is it impeding pedestrian traffic? It's just an idea that he threw out there rather than making changes to ordinances and zoning. So we're going to see what kind of square footage is actually available. Maybe down at the new place, Kitchen 300, I don't know. Maybe they've got some area where it would be feasible. The engineer's going to take a look at some of the areas.
Well, I assume they took it under consideration. The bicycle shop has hundreds of bicycles out there. So what's the difference whether you have bicycles out or you have a couple tables out there?
You're going across to the public right-of-way. There's already things in place for outdoor dining, like where you can see the Harbor Burger did it. There is some, so how about crossing the sidewalk to the other section in the right-of-way towards the street? Is it feasible somewhere? Is there more room somewhere? And did I miss anything? Jump in.
I think the only other aspect is, and it pertains in particular to that property, Luciano's, which is next door to the bike shop, is whether the borough will permit, and I think in instances where you might have a narrow restaurant storefront, and your neighbor, although they may not be a restaurant, you could perhaps utilize their frontage to extend the amount of tables that you have available for curbside dining, if you will, so that you might not necessarily be limited to one or two small, if you want to call them, I think Luciano's referred to them as hors d'oeuvre tables, where they would designate that seating for people who just wanted to sit and have lighter fare hors d'oeuvres, smaller tables that will work in that area. And they seem to certainly have knowledge of it. It seems like they deal with tight spaces in New York City quite often. So I think they're, for lack of a better term, sort of experts in this type of arrangement. So that is one consideration as well, where we'll afford more flexibility to store owners to utilize adjacent properties. Now, that being said, obviously, there has to be the insurance requirements that would be necessary to protect the borough's interest would all have to be in place. But it's something we're exploring, and I think, you know,
And, well, the other thing, and as I'm remembering this, the other thing that the solicitor had said would probably be in our best interest if we did annual licensing as opposed to ordinance and zoning changes, then you wouldn't have places that would be in a situation where they're grandfathered. So instead, you have annual licensing, and then you don't have somebody who ends up in that grandfathered position if you find 3 years down the road there's something, and you're like, for some reason, you want to roll it back. So that was his recommendation, as a way you can avoid that in the future.
And then Jay's on Third could go around the corner. That type of
exactly.
thing.
And with the
Because
licensing,
in front of their place, it's sloped up so high.
Right.
Yeah, the
You can't
sloping.
really put a table there,
You
and then you're
could.
out in the middle of the sidewalk.
exactly.
They'd have to build, yeah.
Well, I think, like the mayor said, you look at all these things, and I mean, I think it's an interesting idea, but it may come down to the fact that there really isn't any place that's feasible.
That's not really feasible.
Because if you know, I understand what the discussions about Luciano's, and that's, but I was thinking that, well, okay, but, you know, the sidewalk in front of Luciano's is fairly narrow. And in July and August, there's people, it's a busy sidewalk. And I'm seeing the door open with waiters and waitresses coming out with trays, running into the pedestrians, trying to get to the front of the bike shop. It just,
Right.
I don't know if that's going to work.
If it's going to work,
you know?
correct.
I just,
Then maybe when it's all said and done, it's allowed, and again, to bolster shoulder season. Maybe you don't allow it in July and August, and you do allow it beginning of June to mid-June maybe, or, you know, beginning of September, a way of bolstering the shoulder season. So it still is, it does seem to be the never-ending discussion.
Right, and I think, but I think to Andrew Catanise's point is the licensing aspect is crucial, because it gives the borough full control over it going forward, rather than permitting it and allowing it to just morph into something that is a permanent feature on the terms of the restaurant owner, rather than us being able to dictate, you know, terms and conditions
Well,
that's
yeah.
around that, and where and when it goes away, and who we allow it to use it going forward. If we find out that this area it was a bad idea, then we can limit it there to take it away from that area, or we find out it's a great idea somewhere else, we can permit it there. So it gives us full control over it. You know, I think we're in 2018, and this is, curbside dining's been around for, this is something that I thought about 20 years ago that would be great. We obviously have, you know, limited season here. Store owners have a limited window to make their money, and I think if it's done properly, we shouldn't hold them back from that.
It works very well in Florida.
Exactly.
And they have,
This is not rocket.
they have ropes
This isn't a,
that they do around the area where the high top tables are. There's no low tables normally, they're usually high tops.
Yep.
And they've done it, and believe it or not, they actually walk in the street and go around, and it seems to work.
2 years ago on the planning board, when we were having the never-ending discussion about the same thing, we were concerned about, and Luciano's is a perfect example, the pitch of the sidewalk and then the flatness, and where would the tables be, because you couldn't put tables on the pitch, so you would put the tables on the sidewalk near the parking meters, but then we would have to worry about the waiters themselves coming out with the trays to those people. And There's also, Luciano's also has 15 people at any given time waiting outside to be able to get in. So one thing that did come up, and I'm not sure if it was ever pursued, was the fact that perhaps it could be explored on a trial and error basis during 1 week, perhaps Restaurant Week in Stone Harbor. And their suggestion was, and I know this won't be really popular, but to rope it off where the parking spaces are, have no parking there, and have tables out there, just for Restaurant Week, just to see how it goes. Do people like it? Do they want to come out more frequently because there is outdoor dining? But it was something that was explored because of the pitch. That made it almost impossible.
Because that pitch does make it difficult. And then I guess any other, maybe perhaps you don't have table service. Perhaps you just walk to the table with your own things. So that's all the kind of, again, it would be nice to finally put it to bed, because like you're saying, 2 years ago or whenever, it's something that, and either say it's not going to work or it's going to work. So,
Well, and we did at our last meeting, task Mott and Associates to come up with standards, if it is feasible, number one, and number two, where it is feasible, what the standards would be, size of table, certain weight of the table so that it doesn't blow away when we have high wind. So all those things need to be considered, and then one would assume that we'll have a report at some point that says, this area is good, this area is no good, and in this area, please, we advise that you enact these sort of restrictions.
and then ultimately it comes to council. Whatever those recommendations are would come to council. So that was planning board. Anything else from A&F?
Do we want to talk about the concession for the Reeds at this
Sorry.
point?
Yep.
All right. We spoke briefly at our last meeting, and I think I'd like to give it back to Jill to go forward with it. There's pluses and minuses. There's yays and nays, I know, on the council. So I think it's a proper time for a discussion to see whether we move forward or whether we drop it.
Okay, I did give everyone the latest updated draft, and I tried to highlight the areas that I either tweaked, took out, or changed. And I also gave you a copy of a letter that was sent to Manchura. I don't know if Sue wants to read that into the record for you, or a resident had
Yeah,
some
I think that would be a
comments.
good idea, because it does bring up some interesting
If you want to do
points.
that, and then I can go over the changes.
Yes.
This email's to Manchur. We're sorry that you could not make the, this morning while taking a walk on the beach, I noticed that 2 guests from the Reeds were enjoying themselves on the beach. The more I have thought about this request made by the Reeds, the more I feel that it should be put on hold until all council members can observe what 95th and 97th Street beaches look like when it is a beautiful sunny day on the busy weekend in July and August. When the Reeds started their setup on the beach, it was chairs, umbrellas, towels, and bottles of water. Over the years, they have added items, a big cart to unload umbrellas and chairs to transport them up the stairs and down to the sand, a large chalkboard to list the names of the attendants, the weather conditions, and when it is high and low tide, a lunch service for their guests, and a large table. We wonder what will be new this year. Speaking of the lunch service, picnic baskets, the attendants empty the remnants into the borough trash cans on the beach. This results in an overflow before 3 o'clock, and the seagulls have a wonderful time pulling items out of the cans. One other item in reference to tents on the beach is the Reeds will often set up 3 umbrellas all next to each other and then surround them with 8 or 9 chairs per their guests' requests. If council goes ahead with the Reeds' request for storage, please make it look different than the existing concession stands so that people realize that it is for storage and not for sale of food, drink, and renting of umbrellas.
This was an unsolicited email from Margaret Leisenring, who lives right there and has the best bird's eye view of what goes on all the time. And I felt that her email to me was not only poignant, but also something worth discussing, because she is the person who sees it more often than any of us. So with Margaret's permission, I asked if I could forward it to Jill and other council members. I sent it to Jill, and Jill forwarded it to everyone. Margaret's here tonight, just in case we do want to call on her for more explanation.
Well, I think some of the things she points out, we could put in the contract that it can't be such as the sign, such as if they do no table, any of their trash they must take with them, because they can't overload the trash bins. We can't keep up with that. So I think those stipulations could be put in a contract with them.
I'll go over some of the things that I changed and as council thinks in their head. I did add in that the bidder would have to submit to us photos of whatever storage shed they were recommending, and that we would have to approve the exact shed to be placed. Under number 3, where I had the beach amenities, I removed the cabanas, so it's now just the chairs, umbrellas, and towels. I know some people had concerns with the cabana, so I removed that. I still had questions with number 4 and number 5. Number 4 being whether permitting the hotels may commence operation I changed it to say upon execution of a signed agreement, since I'm not sure at what point we'll actually put this out the bid, and shall cease at the close of the beach on Labor Day, September 3rd for 2018. I wasn't sure whether council wanted to extend that or not. And then number 5, the hotels may operate, I originally had in here 9 a.m. to 7 p.m. daily, and I know we've had discussion on whether or not we wanted to actually have hours listed in there or not. I did add in, based on some concern, under item number 19, I added, the hotel is obligated to inform all hotel guests that protected bathing beaches shall be located at, and I listed all the ones that we have lifeguards, and then I said, lifeguards are on duty from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. Patrons are not permitted to swim in the ocean before or after those hours or any other time the lifeguard is not on duty. And then I also added the hotel will assume all liability for their patrons. So I think that pretty much covers our concerns with that. But again,
Just excuse me a second, but everybody else will be swimming?
after the, well, technically.
Because people come down to the beach and they swim prior to those hours and after those hours, so we're telling patrons of the hotel that they can't, but everyone else is, that's on the beach.
No, I don't think we're telling them that they can't. We're saying
So we can-
hotels assuming their liability if they do.
No, it says
No, I
patrons
guess-
are not permitted to swim in the ocean before or after those hours or any other time. Lifeguard is not on duty.
But those are our laws. Those are our ordinances.
No, we're in the water before and after the lifeguards are on duty, all the time.
They do, but our ordinance says,
No, there's swimming permitted when lifeguards are not on duty. It just says swim at your own risk when the lifeguards are
that-
not on duty.
Well,
I
It's
can just
permitted.
change that.
Yeah, it's permitted.
Yeah, it's permitted.
All right, so I would just change it that they would swim at their own risk.
To remind them, you're right, but, right, we can't just say, that their patrons can't swim and everybody else is.
Yeah.
right, but it's not our liability. It will be anyway.
It
They
will
will
be.
sue us anyway if something happens.
Right.
But at least we have that statement in there.
Okay. All right, okay.
I don't know if legally, can the hotel assume liability when it's a free ocean? I don't think so.
Essentially, they can. I mean, I guess they could indemnify you, but I don't know that anybody would sign
No.
off on something like that.
No.
And then it's when are they the patron? If they leave at 11 o'clock that day and go to the beach, are they still the patron?
I could try.
Are they not a patron of theirs?
Exactly.
A for effort.
I can
Yeah.
make it out.
Yes.
It was worth a try.
Sorry.
Everybody be swimming like, hi, Reed.
Should have never
You're
stayed.
not allowed to.
The hotels will assume all liability for patrons in case there's damage or something like that
What-
that's caused by them. I mean, we can always litigate that issue. I can put
Right.
that language in. I just would
Okay.
suggest that patrons shall be advised that they swim at their own risk in the ocean
Okay.
for protected beaches.
Good try.
So I get half of it.
Good try.
Under item 10, I put the minimum bid at 15,000. Item 11, I've changed that depending on depending on when we actually go out the bid, that the balance would be payable to us by June 12th. I already went over 19. I've tentatively scheduled for the bids to be opened on May 30th, but again, that will change depending on when you actually authorize it to go out. Jim had recommended under bidder's checklist that I add in and change number C. I changed it to requested but shall be required to be submitted prior to the award of a contract by the borough. That's for the business registration certificate. And then we just added to the checklist the bid deposit in the form of a certified check, cashier's check, treasurer's. And that was all the changes that I made. So,
My original thought was that it would blend in with the other concession stands, but there seems to be, people think the opposite.
correct.
Don't have it look like the rest.
Yeah, it should be different so that people don't think they can go there to rent something.
Right, and and under number 2, I kind of left it open there, just saying that they would have to submit it and we would have to approve it. I didn't
What's
give-
the dimensions of the existing concession stands?
I believe it's 8 by 10 or 8 by 12?
They're 10 by 10, so it's going to be a little bit smaller.
Correct.
How high are they, Grant, do you know?
8 feet?
I have the
No, that-
document here, but.
They gotta be about 10,
I
11
think they're about
feet.
8 feet high.
Yeah,
They're pretty high.
yeah.
It seems to me from Margaret's email and other comments I've heard, so we have a little bit of a Wild West atmosphere going on as it is with chalkboards and wagons and hauling things back and forth to the beach and whatnot. So this may actually improve that situation. And these are renewable yearly, correct?
Correct.
And there's 2 of them? We're still doing 2?
That's all we're doing is the 2.
Doing 2. So, depending on how, or if we put any other verbiage in here about trash removal, that maybe we can eliminate that mess, make it a little more presentable. And I don't, like I mentioned, I don't think we need chalkboards and who the attendant is or anything else, you know. We
No,
don't
I
need
would
any
agree with that,
signage out
too.
there.
Yeah.
I don't think they need a table.
Which really comes down to, my concern then is unlike the concession stands that we have, where we have refrigeration equipment in it and we have people actually working in the booth,
Attended, so to
doing
speak.
what. How high do we need to make these things if we're just going to store chairs and umbrellas in them? I mean, do we need to fit this out so that a person actually works inside it? Or can we just have a low, 6 foot, 8 foot, 6 foot tall locker that?
I have it at 8 foot, I think.
Evidently.
8 feet high you
Our
I
have,
have
okay.
it at 8 foot high.
Yeah,
8
our
feet
beach
is
stands are 8
probably.
feet wide.
You want them to be able to
16
be
Yeah, they
stand
need
up
to be able
in
to
there.
get
to
in and
yeah.
access stuff. If you
And
go
8
any
feet
lower than
high.
that, it will make it.
16
Yeah.
feet wide.
Hard to
16.
keep the umbrellas in.
According to our,
So the stands, Josie's saying the ones presently on the beach are 16 feet wide.
that's what
They
this,
don't seem, are they that wide, Grant? They don't look that wide.
each concession stand shall be approximately 8 feet
Approximately.
wide, 16 feet long, and 8 feet high. That's what's in the contract for
Yeah.
our food concession stands.
Correct, that's what they could have been, right,
That's what they could have been,
That's
but they're
what it
actually
is.
smaller.
Can be, weren't, yeah.
yes.
Under
that's
number
pretty big.
2, there's, you said amenities such as chairs, umbrellas, and towels, and that they're only allowed to provide that. How about they do provide food? So,
They provide what, I'm sorry?
food,
That's not, we're not putting that in this, it was my
Yeah,
understanding.
they're not operating, they're not going to have like
No, but they-
a refrigerator with food in there where they're, right. The only thing they can do is use it for storage of those items, those 3 items, umbrellas, chairs, and towels. Storage for that.
we have a contractor that sells food and drink, so this cannot, we don't want this to be in competition with that.
So that'll be the only thing
No.
in there. Won't even have electric, so they can't have any kind of
No, but
refrigeration.
what I'm saying is they deliver picnic baskets to there, so we're saying that's okay, is that right?
I'm not saying that's okay.
We're not addressing,
That's a
We're not
sep- yeah,
addressing
that's
it,
a
I guess is
separate-
probably.
That's a separate operation.
Right.
we're not addressing
As long as they're
that
not
at all.
storing the food in the shed
fine.
and using that to disseminate it,
It's
what they
fine.
do for their guests is up to them.
Good.
All
All
we're
right,
going to
thank
do is
you.
tell them they have to take their trash with them.
I
But whatever
have
they
that-
do for
I
their
do
guests,
have that
someone else can do.
Right.
I have in 20.
Deliver
that-
food to the beach.
Right.
If the Reed's is going to deliver food to the beach, or Bud's Market, or anybody,
They could.
Right. They're already doing that now. Everybody's doing that now.
And pizza's delivered to the beach
Yeah.
all the time.
They all
Yeah.
do.
it doesn't mean that it's going to work, that everybody does it.
Well, it's.
If you go back, last month, we talked about, or last council meeting, you said, and you could be absolutely right, I don't have that information, that we were granted 8 stands. We only, in our contract now, they have 6, but I don't know where that was written, that we did get permits to put 8 stands on the beach. It's not in our permit. We applied for
Not in
6 and we got 6.
Then I could have been wrong. I just thought it was 8.
Yeah, in the present beach contract, we applied, it said at the beginning of it, we applied for 6 and we have 6.
In the contract, that's all
Yes,
we bid
the
out. right?
award.
That's all I bid out was for
Yeah.
6, yes.
But we
But-
could have
but
done
we
8 if
could
we
have-
so desired.
The DEP gave us approval for
For 8.
8 concession stands. Don't confuse concession stands with these storage sheds, totally different thing.
Exactly.
They are, in my mind,
Yes.
too.
Yes,
Right, and that's
So
what,
that-
right.
that's a good thing.
No, I don't think it is.
Well, I meant that you,
If
that-
it's a concession stand to sell food, then we have you're going to call this a concession stand for a private contractor to store?
no, I'm calling it a storage,
It's a
storage
Storage
shed.
shed.
Storage shed.
But I think, Josie, what I thought at the time when I first was looking at this is I thought we were granted permission from the DEP for 8 structures. We've only done 6, so therefore we have permission for an additional 2, should we want to use it. And that's what I said to Jill. Is that accurate information?
That's what I'm trying to find out, and I don't have that answer. because
Right, and
I
that's
was-
where, do
We
you-
were on beach wreck and tourism together when we did this, and worked very hard to get those stands. I
because
don't
that, and
remember
then we
that.
asked Mark.
So I went back through the electronic files that Jill was able to secure, and what I saw was that there wasn't any permits needed for
Right.
temporary and seasonal structures as long as you were in the upper one-third of the usable beach area.
And no electricity to them.
And as long as there was no excavation, filling, or grading.
Which would stand for no matter what you put on the beach, as far as you can't grade the beach to fit these things.
Right, if you came and just, in theory, just dropped it in the one-third area, you didn't even need a permit as long as you got them off by a
But
certain
you
time.
can't move sand to put them there.
Correct.
So that's when, but initially I thought, oh, we can't exceed 8.
Yeah, I didn't remember the amount.
That's what I thought, and that's,
That's only if you're looking at doing a concession stand with electricity.
Right.
Because you'd have to excavate into the dune area. Because these are temporary, see, no electricity being disturbing the dunes, you don't need any type of DEP permit for it. So there's no limitation other than your own desire of how many you would want.
and then once you explained that to me, then, because I kept saying, what's the difference? How come? What's the difference? And then that was explained to me as what the difference is. Okay.
Now, to go back to the trash removal, I do have in number 20, and I can tweak that to be a little more explicit, but it does say that they are responsible for the performance of all terms and conditions and the proper conduct and management, including the removal of debris and cleanliness of the prescribed area.
Well, do they remove, they don't remove their own trash, do they? Grant, or they just put them in your cans? They put the,
Well, what I'm saying here is that if they have anything, they should be removing it themselves. They really shouldn't
They
be
should be.
generating trash.
they shouldn't be what, I'm sorry?
They shouldn't be generating trash.
Right,
Well, but-
trash, right. They shouldn't be generating any trash because they're putting it all back in.
And they
at the end
do,
of the
they have
day,
to remove the debris and keep it clean.
Right?
Right.
Yes.
Because all it is umbrellas, chairs, and towels.
I'm talking about the lunches. I
No,
know-
Right.
They're gonna
throwing-
still
I know
deliver
that.
lunches.
You're still gonna
what
have
I would
lunches
presume,
coming,
right,
so-
and that trash is going in, but that's the
I mean,
same
I-
as if Nemo's delivers a pizza.
Right, exactly.
You get it and you put it in the trash,
Ex-
so, you know.
Except you'll have more of it in a concentrated area.
Yeah.
That's
So,
exactly right.
if,
So we just, right.
if we tighten that up to say that, you remove your own trash,
Right.
and don't let it build up on the beach.
Right.
Maybe that, this, okay, personally, I'm against it. But I don't have a real hard reason why. And from the comments I'm hearing here, I guess I'm against it because I hate to see more structures on the beach. I just, but with this vehicle, and it's only a year lease, if you want to call it a lease, we may be able to make this situation better than it currently is by how we enforce it. And if it doesn't work, then we don't renew it next
Then
year.
we don't do it again.
But
Right.
the Reeds has to understand that this is almost like a probationary thing. We're going to try it.
Right.
But it's up to you to
We can undo it easily.
do it, to keep it, to keep the place neat and orderly.
Who's the "we" that's going to enforce it? I'm serious. Who's the "we"? We don't have enough "we's."
Well, we all go to the beach often.
Yeah, I'm on that beach every weekend,
You're up there
Saturday and
all the
Sunday.
time, and we can see for ourselves what they're doing.
And, or I mean, is it,
Margaret will let us know if they're.
and right, who would, I mean, I don't know. Grant, would somebody there take a look? Would see trash can? I don't know. It's a good question. Who's enforcing everything else on the beach?
Maybe.
That was the second part of my question, that I didn't want to go there.
Enforce was the wrong word. What we observe.
We'll monitor it.
Summer, okay?
And I think if
I'll
you
make it a point.
If you make these stipulations with the Reeds, they're going to follow through. They're not like a rinky-dink that they're just going to do it because they want to come back. So,
And we should, as I said before, whatever structure they come up with should be, in my opinion, as low profile as feasible.
And that's what has to be approved.
Correct.
Okay. So are we going, what's the general consensus? Move at the regular meeting, a motion to go out to bid?
yep.
I can say that I'm not in favor of the idea of putting storage sheds on our beach, so that's the way I feel. I think
Okay.
this is opening Pandora's box. I think that our beach should be protected from picnicking. I think our beach should be kept as clean and organized and uncommercialized as possible. So I understand it. I see what the effort is. I just think that that's the public beach between 97th, 96th, and 95th, and I just think that that's may be absolutely perfect, and it may not. I'm just not in favor of using the beach for storage.
It needs a trial and error, and you had just said you're not in favor of picnicking, but you've never taken a picnic, a sandwich down there, or?
I think that the hard thing to define, Joan, is what picnicking is. The people that know how to go to the beach, and many of them are in this room, if you go to the beach, you take something you can carry in this hand and this hand. One is probably a cooler with some beverages, snacks, or sandwiches, and the other could be suntan lotion or whatever. And you sit down and you enjoy yourself, and no one bothers you. When people come down on the beach with a cabana, and it takes 3 people to carry the cooler, and somebody to set up the table and chairs, and somebody to deliver the food over the bulkhead to the beach, in my humble opinion, that's picnicking. And I don't think that that's appropriate.
And you've seen that on our beach, somebody come down and
Yes.
deliver this big thing and
I've
set a
watched
table
a-
up and set chairs up and a
Yes.
tablecloth?
Yes.
You have?
Yes, and I've also watched a
I've
case
never
of
seen it.
beer be delivered to the beach, too.
Oh.
I'm an old lady, so I've seen it all.
But then you'll go in somebody's hidden case and see vodka and orange juice, so.
I don't go in anybody's hidden case.
What
of-
I'm saying, it's an analogy.
Well, yeah, how one defines picnicking, I mean, we
Yes.
could go on forever. It just, sorry, Karen, I was just
No,
going to
that's
say,
all right.
stick
Go
with the subject at hand.
And yeah, I think, I agree in many ways with you, Josie, and what you're saying. I think this, though, may be our opportunity to clean this up because it's happening without our having any agreement or benefiting in any way from it. So if we give them a contract with these stipulations and tell them that no table, no chalkboard, and they must clean up their own trash, it has to be maintained, maybe we'll have a better event happening, because it's going to be there anyway this summer.
Well, one more devil's advocate. We keep saying the Reeds because the Reeds are the ones that have asked for this. What is the criteria for the person that can bid on this?
Got to be a hotel or motel.
Stone Harbor.
In Stone Harbor, yes. Got to be a hotel, motel in Stone Harbor, yes. Yep,
Technically, the way it's written, hotel.
hotel. Right, it's only available for people who have a hotel in Stone Harbor, not even condominiums, hotel,
And in only those locations,
and in only those 2 locations.
not mobile, right? Before I forget, number 4, September 3rd actually seems very early to me. I would propose that, especially if we're trying to build up our shoulder season, I think that we should extend this through at least early October, maybe even through Columbus Day weekend. I'm sure whoever, assuming the Reeds would be the successful bidder, I'm sure they could utilize this feature in conjunction with their off-season guests that still want to go down to that beach without schlepping a chair down there.
I had made that notation also. I put either the 15th or 30th of September.
Columbus Day
Maybe
weekend.
Till Savor September weekend.
That's at the last
Always
weekend in
draws a big
September.
crowd.
And just one more thing, too, we should say motels, hotels or motels, because we do have motels in town,
If you want.
right? They're motels.
Sure.
What if a real
Is
estate
there only one?
agent wanted to do it?
Yeah, right, we got to say motels.
Okay.
It's interesting you just said that, because someone said to me, why can't a real estate company do this who has 2 or 150 houses? Why can't they do it?
Right. What if Diller and Fisher, excuse me for the reference, want to set up, what if they wanted to set up a little tent or a little something, and they wanted to give hot dogs out every Saturday on the beach, or to say goodbye to the people who are leaving, that kind of thing? Could they
There
bid
is
on
an
it?
ordinance
That's
against
a good
that. That's
idea.
soliciting, I think.
Yeah.
Can't do that.
Too much.
You will.
Well, the difference being too, I mean, realistically speaking, the difference being too, when somebody comes in and they're renting a home versus somebody with a hotel room, and, you know, you provide every amenity to that person renting the condominium or renting that house, and there is some places who are providing beach service similar to what the Reeds is doing right now. They're doing it. They don't need permission to tell their guests, don't worry about it, we're going to make sure your chairs are on the beach. Nobody needs permission for that. It's happening right now, and remember, too, it's a revenue source. We're not letting anybody do this for free, and if it seems to not work, we just will not do it again. And to what Ray said, perhaps it'll clean it up. And also, the hot dogs are food, we're not going to let them do that.
I know, and that was just an opportunity for me to say, maybe not just hotels, but, and that was kind of tongue-in-cheek anyway. However, I just now looked through my pictures, and I have a picture of our tents that we have put on hold year after year, where there are buffet tables.
Right.
People
It
to have-
happens from time to time, no doubt, but, I mean, like last year, I got to say, I met with a group of 100, what was that number?
Family.
It was 87 people on the beach together, and they were renting a total of 16 homes, and they gathered, it was their 70th year in Stone Harbor. They've grown to, for 1 week, they all come, and they all had the same T-shirts on, and they were all at the 87th Street Beach. So I don't know, they're coming in large groups.
That's a wonderful thing.
I just got.
I don't know what you do with that.
I don't know how, again, reasonable people can differ. For me to sit here and judge someone because they want to set up a buffet, that's what they like. What is wrong with that? They want to have a good time and be together. I'm remiss to understand the connection between that and what is otherwise a simple sandwich. I don't understand it at all.
So anyway, back to my original question. We'll bring it up at the end of, for a motion, and then we'll vote on it at that time, at the regular meeting.
Good.
Can I just circle back to number 5, though? I apologize. I have in there 9 AM to 7 PM. Did we want to just take out the hours and not restrict it? Or do you want to,
For someone who's
specify?
down on the beach often, well before 9, there's a lot of people. So I don't see why someone, if you're a hotel guest and you say, I want a chair and an umbrella, and it's 7 AM, they're watching the sunrise, and there they go, they want 2 chairs, for example. Maybe they just want chairs and not the umbrella. My opinion, but, you know,
I agree. I think it should be taken out.
Well, you gotta put in there somewhere that when it's guarded, you've gotta have that in there somewhere.
well, I have the part that says,
Yeah.
I have the part
6
that
to
says
8 PM.
Down there and there's people partying on the beach.
Right, but it doesn't preclude them from staying on the beach, sitting in their chair. Nothing does.
Something has to say when they're guarded.
I do
Guarded
have
from
that
10 to
in,
5.
I have that in there, yeah, in a different
Oh,
section.
you mean the beach?
Yeah.
No, that's not her question.
Yeah. My question is, when are they allowed to set up the chairs?
Oh.
Yeah.
That's the question.
What time is the beach being raked?
I mean, I think Judy's right. You take your own chair down and you sit there at 6 AM.
Go down there anytime.
What's the difference?
They raked down before, they raked at 4. I think it's okay.
Margaret, what time do you see them now setting up? Yeah, because people are sit there until the sun goes down.
Sure they do.
They sit there till the sun goes down.
Sunrise to sunset?
Yeah,
That work?
That'll work. All right.
I like it.
Define sunrise and sunset.
When you can physically see.
Okay.
Okay, where are we?
Public Works.
Oh, great.
No, I'm going to start first.
Oh,
Do you mind?
okay. We all look forward to Grant, though, so much.
He's coming. The League of Municipalities met this past week, and Vicki Clark, from the county chamber, asked me to tell everyone there's a free customer service and training at the Reeds on May the 3rd at 12:30. Training is from 1 to 3. So if anybody's interested, if you want to pass to the store owners or somebody, it's to the chamber would be a good idea. And with that, I just want to say Public Works met on Thursday, March the 1st. We had a very full itinerary. We went over the work rules, which you'll see later that we're passing. We went over no trespassing signs that Jill and I are working together for 122nd Street. We also had as-built services for utility work, crossover reviews, the 10-year road program, and that's how we ended the meeting. So with that, Grant, you're on board. Oh, excuse me, bulk trash is May 14th. Did I blew it? I'm sorry.
I really don't have a lot. Did you guys get your reports for the month? No, you didn't.
No, we didn't?
You didn't.
I didn't.
Because yesterday was the end of the month, so they're not ready.
I didn't get it.
Which one's it?
No, they will be done sometime around bulk trash day. Just a few updates that I have. Parking meters are in effect, so you need to go put money in the meter. Starting today, and also the no turn on red is in effect today.
That's right.
He's not even listening. Yes, all 6 kiosks have been set on the 200 block of 96th Street and are up and running. I'm sure we're going to get a lot of phone calls and problems. They don't give change. So whatever you put in the machine, it doesn't give you change. So be careful when you do that. Read the signs. The marina pilings have been set. Docks are in. Water lines are up and running. Fish cleaning stations are operating. And the bulkhead which we had issues during, we were told about some issues with the exterior bulkhead during the dredging, and then this past winter, it just exploded. And that was fixed and repaired and capped last week. So the marina's up and running finally. Beach raking, as we talked about a little bit earlier, started on Monday and will continue through the season. It'll only be during the week until after Memorial Day, and then we'll go every day after that through September. We ordered the flood road sign for 96th Street to 99th Street. We need to talk about the setup there because traffic flow. I know that the largest issue is at 98th Street, but in order to control the traffic flow, we have to stop them at 99th Street and stop them at 96th Street from going down in those blocks. So signs have been ordered. They should be in within the next week, and we'll get the bases set right after that. Buildings Department reconstructed the porta pot enclosures for 81st Street and 122nd Street. The one on 122nd Street got struck by a vehicle. We don't know what happened, but it almost knocked the whole thing down, so we had to rebuild that one. And the one at 81st Street was in bad condition, so we just finished that one today, and the porta pots were delivered today. So if anybody calls you and says, are they in, they are in, for both the marina and 122nd Street parking lot, 23rd. Beach concession stands will be up and running Memorial Day weekend. The Beach Shack got a new hot water heater, yay.
They'll be happy.
Grounds Department, as you can see, are hard at work getting town looking beautiful. Aeration, fertilization, irrigation systems are up and running. Mulching has been done to all the beds. We have some new plantings coming in for the 96th Street area where a lot of the rose bushes have failed, so we're going to try something different there. Same color, but different species. And a couple of trees that are going to be planted on the islands, and some plants that failed over the winter will be replaced. And you stole my thunder. Bulk trash day is May 14th. And there's already stuff out on the curb. Water and sewer will be flushing hydrants starting May 17th. This is a requirement by the DEP to be done twice a year to score the pipe and get all the static water off out of the system, as well as getting any debris that might be in the pipes and cleaning them out. So if anybody calls and says they have discolored water, they need to pull the aerator out of their sink faucet, let it run until it runs clear, put the aerator back in, and that'll clear the problem up. Should clear the problem up. And then following that, storm drains and storm drain piping will be cleaned as per DEP regulations the following week. That's all I got for right now.
Grant, you said a car hit on 122nd Street, the porta potties or the bathrooms?
A vehicle, I don't know what hit it, but
So we don't know who it was?
No.
Oh,
Nope.
okay. So we can't go after them for liability? No.
Nope.
How did you know it was a vehicle? I mean, it's that much of an impact?
It hit pretty hard because it broke all the 4x4s that were holding it up, structure up.
Wow.
That happened, a while ago.
Yes.
Yeah, that was months ago.
December,
Yeah.
December, January, somewhere time around there.
And we got reimbursed from the JIF for that.
Oh, nice.
We did?
According to Jim.
Good.
I gotta pay for that lumber.
How much? I thought you said 100,000.
No.
I say, yes! We're gonna build them.
One question on those storage sheds. Who's placing them and who's maintaining them?
They are, both.
Is that gonna
We
work
tell them where,
contracts?
we tell them where to place them, and they're responsible for putting them on, taking them off,
Okay,
storing them.
all right, because I just want to be
Yes.
aware of what's when somebody calls and says it's listing and the storm
Right.
knocked it off its axes, I gotta fix it. I don't wanna have to do that if I don't,
Nope, you won't
they're
have to worry
responsible
about
for
that.
it.
Yep.
Okay. Any questions?
Thank you.
Thank you, Grant.
Pay the meters.
Can I go off topic for just a second?
Sure.
Jill, what's the latest iteration of the pump station design? Has that been completed yet? Are they still working on that?
Maybe that's.
I believe they are still working on that. We met with them to go over, to make sure that they incorporated everything, and we have not gotten anything back
And
from
there's,
them.
the plan is still to have Thornton look at that at some point?
Yes.
Okay. And the sewage pump station, tentative schedule for commencing that? We're not even out to bid yet on any of that,
No.
are we?
Right.
So we're
Pushing it.
yeah, are we in the fall now with that?
I
For
would say
start
yes.
date?
At this point, yes.
Okay.
Anything else from Public Works? Utilities?
Nothing to report from utilities.
The discussion for the charges for emergency shutoffs?
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. We did meet at our utilities meeting, and we discussed having a maximum fine. Jill, correct me if I'm wrong, we ended up at $250 as the change for emergency shutoff, rather than a graduated penalty, which currently goes from 250 to 500 and then to 750, correct?
Correct.
Okay. That's really up for discussion. Jim, you had provided to the Utilities Committee a breakdown of what the costs associated with emergency shutoff. I believe that documentation said that a worst-case scenario would be in the range of $90. So it's my view that the penalty, if you will, should not exceed the worst-case scenario by more than 150%. Other members of the committee felt as though having a high penalty would be a strong disincentive and would, I think, provide a strong incentive for people to take better care of their property so that they don't have an emergency shut-off. So it's really up for discussion amongst council as to how they all feel.
What happens with an emergency shutoff? That's the person who's carrying the pager? And they get a call and they come in and they shut it at the meter, shut it at the curb?
It starts with, it starts with the police department dispatch. Dispatch calls our employees come in, they punch in, grab a truck, go down to wherever they have to go to make the shut off, they read the meter. They first have to confirm that it's running, and then they read the meter. And then that paperwork goes to the utilities clerk, and the utilities clerk works up all the, how much water has been consumed and work out whether or not it's going through the sewer. And there's a lot of paperwork that has to be done there, a lot of footwork, other than just, I'm sorry, but I don't agree with $90.
No, because
all
you're
this
talking about
extent.
24/7. This is a
$90
service.
may be the guy coming in,
Right?
shutting the meter down,
Not-
going home, but.
They don't,
Not all of the time, the emergency shutoffs that doesn't mean that it's during off hours. It's just,
Right.
it's an emergency, they have to go out.
So that's
A lot of the
all-
times
okay.
they're actu- A lot of the times, they're actually here working,
Right.
so
So,
that's, right.
And
There's-
somebody goes,
but
okay, so
there-
you're saying on average 90? Okay.
yeah, there's background stuff that goes on other than just the actual physically shutting it down.
Again, I'm not suggesting that we go to 90. I feel as though
Yeah, I think-
250, which is the current,
Which
you
is,
know,
right.
initial charge.
Right,
should
that
just
was
be
the
in
original-
perpetuity,
That was the
rather than
original
a
amount of the
graduated-
ordinance.
that's in
250.
place right now.
The 250.
250 is in place right now?
Yes, it's
Help.
250, 500, and 750. Before
Yeah,
we
we did that.
amended it last year or the year before, it was just a 250. We never had the additional fees. So the recommendation is to just go back to where it was at the 250.
Has there been any, well, we'll finish this discussion first, I guess, and you're going to go further with it.
Oh, your question wasn't about that?
Well, it's related, but no, it's not.
That's
not-
the next
not
thing, that's the
emergency
next
shut-offs.
topic.
That's the,
Okay.
gotta get this done first.
I know what he's,
So no comments, yea or nay, other than,
Keep
We
it the way it
dis-
is.
We discussed it at length for a long time at Charles's meeting, and the consensus was with what Charles presented, that it was the best way to go.
so it would come back as an ordinance change with a flat 250,
Would it? Yes?
right?
That was my,
that was the.
That's what we're saying now. It would be a flat 250.
for every shut-off. And it would be 250 for any call on a sewer backup as well, which is not in the ordinance now. So it would actually be
Add that in, right.
adding that in and making it 250 across the board for one or the other.
Sewer backup.
One for each two.
Right now, we don't
Sewer backup.
address, nor do we charge, correct, Grant, for if there's a sewer backup? On an emergency basis.
Right.
Okay.
Then the other half of the discussion we had, which I'm sure that's what Ray was going to reference, was the charges that we have for the emergency repairs for the lateral, where we've had to go in and change, and we charge the people the $3,300.
And we've had this discussion before, and I think when it came out of committee, we had a consensus that we would like to change our ordinance to reflect that the homeowner is, and correct me if I'm wrong, Joe, but the homeowner is responsible for everything outside the meter pit. Going forward, this would be by ordinance change, outside the meter pit to the home.
Correct.
The borough would be responsible for everything in the meter pit out
To
to
the
the
road.
street.
Correct.
We would also make this retroactive to include
27.
reimbursement of anyone that experienced this, an act of God, if you will, freeze up of their lateral to the street between the meter pit. There's been roughly 7 or 8 of those, which have resulted in charges to the homeowner.
Retroactive, what, 2017?
Just for all of 2017.
Yeah, through.
And there was
17.
8 or 9?
Actually, there was 2 in 17, and the rest of them were in the early part of 18.
2008.
And it's a total of 28,000.
28,000.
And the recommendation was to refund those back.
And part of the idea behind this is, that there's really two reasons for this. One is, it's commonly accepted and industry standard, if you will, that this is the way most boroughs handle these matters, that overwhelmingly boroughs will be responsible for the meter pit and beyond to the main. But also, we're doing roads here where we're giving people new service, and they don't, it's paid for out of the borough funds at large, rather than by the individual homeowner. So it seems patently unfair to say to someone who experienced a freeze-up of that line, because they happen to have an old line, that they have to pay, they have to foot the bill to the tune of roughly $3,000, when everyone else that gets a new street just got one for free, if you will. Not free, but not individually expensed. So it seemed unfair at some level that this should be taking place. So that was my recommendation, and, I know we had some discussion as to whether or not.
The other part of that, because there is going to be less revenue coming in to cover the purchasing of the parts and everything, we calculated it out, and in order to basically make us whole, we would need to do a annual maintenance fee that all property owners would have to pay, and it would be billed annually, and that winds up to be about $10. The recommendation would be a $10 annual fee to cover all the expenses to maintain the lines in the borough.
And you cushioned that because I think it was
I did.
7.
I did, I upped
We
it.
came up with 7. 7 was
We
the
came up
hard
with
number.
7.
Yeah, 7 was the hard, and I cushioned it up to 10.
Good for you.
And conceivably, as all these laterals are replaced, correct me if I'm wrong, Grant, the new laterals don't experience this type of. Yeah, so conceivably, this goes away once all the laterals are replaced and we have them all in, the current state of technology. So I'm sure.
So what has to happen there? Does this have to come back as an ordinance change and also a resolution to refund?
Yes,
Those
two
people?
things, an ordinance change, eliminating that fee, but adding in the $10 maintenance fee, and then a resolution to refund to those individuals from 2017 and 2018.
And those people, what, will they be the $250? Do they get
No,
assessed
this is the
anything?
3,000. This is
They're
the 3,000.
No, but what I mean is, do they get assessed anything? Or is it just that they're not, right, they're going to be
If-
refunded the entire amount?
We'll be refunding,
Okay.
well, the emergency shut-off fee is separate, so if someone was charged the $250, that remains, it's
Okay,
the fee for.
that's what I was saying, what would be the,
And this has to do with sprinklers, too.
Yeah.
If is a sprinkler in the pit?
Breaks, yeah. The emergency shut-off fee is when it's going from the meter to the home. This, what we're talking about here, is from the meter to the main
Right.
on our side.
got it. And Josie has a question about the
Well,
sprinkler?
In that pit, there is a possibility of having your sprinkler line also leak. In that, there's the sewer, the whatever, and the whatever in that. Yeah, okay. Got it.
Anybody else? Moving on to,
Well, we're all agreed with that, right? I mean, I think we're all in agreement that.
We agree.
we'll bring it back.
The meeting.
Write the ordinance and present it,
Discussion, quite a few items. We're looking at a time, we got 15 minutes. So regulating pools, bayfront properties, that went back to the planning board. Council said go back to the planning board and give a specific number how far the pool would be from the bulkhead. The planning board's recommendation is 5 feet. Discuss.
I'd like to open the discussion. I think the ordinance is the right way to go. I think we need to give relief to the bayfront owners who would like to put a pool in beyond the established bulkhead line. I think it's a good step in the right direction. However, I have a problem, not with the current ordinance, because, first, let me ask this question. If somebody puts in a new bulkhead right now, are they limited to 6'2"?
Yes.
Yes.
They are, so they can't go higher than that. Okay. So then that ordinance as written is fine. I think it's great. However, when we move to an 8-foot bulkhead, now I have problems with the extra 30 inches on top. And the reason is, theoretically, it probably is common in the borough. There's a lot of bulkheads, say, that are at 5 feet 5 right now. We put in an 8-foot ordinance and leave this 30 inches there. Somebody comes in and puts in a new bulkhead, we've just added 5 feet of height to that property, between the 30 inches on the decks and the extra 2 feet on the bulkhead. It's too much, I think it's too much height at one time. It's overwhelming, I think, especially if your neighbors have a house that's only a couple feet above grade. What I would like to see happen is, going forward, as these 8-foot bulkheads start to take shape and they start to get involved, the next set of council people, 10 years from now or 15 years from now, may look at it, and then they can see how it's developing, and then they can adjust that 30 inches or leave it alone. Whatever they want to do, they can do. But I think we need to have some agreement amongst ourselves that that 30-inch, if we left it at basically like the same, we're allowed 30 inches over 6'2" now, or over your bulkhead, whichever it applies to that property. If we keep that same height, then basically you're looking at a deck that's roughly 6 inches over 8 feet. I think that's something we can live with. So how we word the ordinance to make, to develop that horizontal limit on your deck, which would correspond to your pool, so that we don't shoot up 4.5, 5 feet, 5.5 feet all at one time. And then it can be looked at down the road sometime. But what if we pass this ordinance now or go for first reading and say, okay, and then we do the second and third a month from now, that's going to work as long as what I'm hearing from the engineer is absolutely true. It's 6'2" right now, and you can't put in an 8-foot bulkhead. Because I don't want somebody coming in and throwing up an 8-foot bulkhead and applying this new ordinance and, shooting
I've
at a
never seen
loophole here.
anybody exceed what you're being asked to put in, so it would be at 6'2".
But you've never seen it, but can somebody?
Well, we could always say, lower it.
That's why
Like,
I'm,
so
Well, I guess the question
for
is,
example, if you-
if we adopt the ordinance that we're looking, the direction we're going at the 8-foot, that could be this year. So
It has to be.
whatever your issues are, I think that should be incorporated into the
Right.
rule now.
No, I've
Oh,
seen,
yeah, no, it has to be.
Yeah.
If we're in agreement that we don't want to go 30 inches over 8 foot, that language has to be incorporated into that bulkhead ordinance that we come forward.
Right.
What I'm concerned with is somebody getting in the middle of these ordinances and saying, ooh, I can build one now to 8 feet because there's no limit. When I read our ordinance, bulkhead ordinance several months ago, I know we talked about this a year ago, about how high can you build your bulkhead, and everybody, thought there was a limit. I didn't see it in the ordinance. It said 6'2", but it didn't give I think it says will be a minimum or should be at 6'2", but it doesn't say, that that's the
So maybe we
maximum
want to put
top.
a maximum in there.
well, that's why I am in agreement, and don't make up my mind for me because some people have. I'm in agreement with this concept of these pools. I will say again that I think that what Ray is saying makes sense. If we can just keep moving our ordinance along that we've been working on now for months, which has been meticulously done with lots of experience, get that done and pull this into it, it should be fine. The people should be able to do what they want to do. The only other thing I want to say quickly, as I asked at the last meeting, and I don't see the information, and I didn't go get it, how many people are we talking about in the 400 property owners that are on the bay have this issue with this established bulkhead line? Where is a map that can say, there's 10 of them here, there's 6 of them there? How many people are we talking about doing this for? Is there a map? There has to be a map. We know where the established bulkhead line is. We know we have a-
Probably just look street by street, right?
Well, but is it for 10 people? Is it for 100 people?
Just curious, does it matter?
it doesn't really matter.
Well, it doesn't matter if it's 5, but if it's 100 and some, it
doesn't matter.
does.
It doesn't matter if it's
I mean,
one.
5 people might not want to put pools in their backyard, right?
Yeah, they might not want to right now, and then when they sell their house next year, the person buying it does.
I know, I'm
But that's, right, and I hear what you're saying. I'm just want to go back to what Ray is saying, where right now, if somebody wants to build a 12-foot bulkhead, they could?
No, the way
Is
I
that what
read
you're
the
saying,
ordinance,
essentially?
It shall be at 6'2", is
Yeah,
where.
I don't think it says minimum. You can keep going if you'd like. I think there needs to be some common sense to that, so you may want to say.
Well, that's what Ray's asking.
Hey,
Is
we're
there a
developing,
maximum? Oh, do you know, Paul?
Yeah, but that's,
Okay, so there is something built to make sure it doesn't go higher.
And we do
Okay.
have some bulkheads in that study that are higher than we thought, when we got all the
Right,
surveys done.
okay, did you get that, Ray?
Yeah, I understood what Paul said.
Okay, what
yeah.
Paul said, so
That
there
was-
is
it's
something that,
basically
okay.
Ray,
What would be the reason for it to go 7.5? What, why?
right now,
Yeah, why?
and with this, if we put this ordinance in effect,
Mm-hmm.
then he can go 30 inches over 7.5. He can build his deck up as high,
It's pretty high.
so that if we have these new elevations on houses, you're get somebody who's going to want to walk out of their kitchen and not use a step and walk right out to the bay. So you're going to have this, 5 or 6 foot tall structure in the backyard going out. Because the way the ordinance is written, he could do that, or she could do that. The property owner could do that.
The property owner can do that now at 6.2, and if we go to 8, then you're adding 30 inches on top of 8 feet.
I've said that
Within the
before, when we
DEP
bring,
regulations, right? Everything, like, we're not going out, we're going up.
Up.
So right now, the way the ordinance is written, there is a review process, and that comes before the borough engineer. So if somebody wanted to put a bulkhead at 12, that would be a review comment. No, go
Well,
to 8.
Okay.
That's why I think, what Josie said is true. It would be great if we could put all this, roll it up into one package, bulkhead heights, deck heights,
Establish
house,
bulkhead line,
house heights and all that, But if we're in agreement that we're going to stay at 6.2 until we figure out what we're going to do as the final answer, there's no reason that this particular ordinance can't move forward, because if we're going to hold the bulkhead at 6.2. If somebody wants to put a pool, there's a lot of people going to want to put a pool in and don't necessarily want it to be higher than the bulkhead. So, there are people out there waiting to put pools in now. And I don't know that there's a good reason to hold them up. If they want to put an in-ground pool in a grade level, let them do it.
So that was actually a memo I provided to Jill for that planning board meeting that talks about if you're going to start, looking at things like that, that if, when you do go to 8, exactly, you could have a retaining wall up to your neighbors. So you may want to look at language in tandem with not allowing that 30 inches in that setback. So whatever your
that's
setback
exactly right.
distance is, 5 feet, 1 feet, 20 feet, I would try to keep everything at grade. And I had cited some examples from other municipalities that have done that to make sure that in that offset, everything's at grade, so you're not destroying a view.
right, you have to step down to grade when you get into that side yard setback. That was always my recommendation, is that when we go to 8, you eliminate that 30 inches above 8, above the actual bulkhead as being allowable, because Ray is exactly spot on. It's going to create situations where we're doing something to, protect our island, protect our homeowners, protect the land, but yet you're going to create such a disparity all of a sudden. So maybe down the road, when everyone gets to 8, then that's the point in time where you say, now, okay, you can get that 30 inches so that now you can go seamless from your living space out to the deck, and then drop down a few more feet at some point when you get closer to that bulkhead to 8. But for right now, I
See,
think
the
the
bulk- yeah.
disparity's too great.
The bulkhead, the new bulkhead height's a necessity. We all, it's a necessary evil. We
Right.
really got to do it. The extra 30 inches is not.
I
That's
agree.
something we can wait on.
I agree.
going out into the
And I think Avalon, from what I was told, I don't know this factually 100%, but there was a situation like that that just occurred in Avalon that's created a dispute between neighbors.
I'm sure it would.
So, all that being said, I don't know what now, I don't know what if we're gonna hold new bulkheads to 6.2 until the new ordinances come into effect, then I don't see any reason we can't move forward, with this ordinance the way it's written.
Jill, can we pass a resolution to that effect, that
We have to,
we resolve, the Borough Council makes a resolution that the zoning official hold all current bulkheads heights?
The ordinance is read as the borough engineer.
Yeah.
Yeah, so,
Oh, then the borough engineer, right?
yeah.
Hold all
So
bulkhead
you're
heights?
still in the, from what I recall, you're still in a draft mode with this ordinance. So you
This
can
other one, right?
tweak, add,
Every time we have a meeting, Mark, we go in with 6 issues and leave with 14.
Yeah.
So it's, but we're getting there, we're getting there. But, you know, like I said, there's no point in holding anybody up right now that has been waiting for years with this.
I agree. I know of
Fighting
several
this established
homeowners that
bulkhead line.
literally have CAFRA permit in hand and are like,
As
But-
long as they
but-
don't build to 8 feet,
Right.
though, they've got to be held to the 6.2. Right,
Right
Ray?
now-
That's what you're saying right now.
The 30-inch, the 30-inch rule's got to apply to the 6'2" bulkhead.
Right.
The 8-foot bulkhead.
Right.
yep.
So if I'm deciding tomorrow, I'm going to put in a new bulkhead, and I see 8 feet down the road, and I want a pool, so I can't get my pool and my 30 inches. Even though I'm thinking ahead, and I'm like, I'm going to put my bulkhead, what are you going to make me, I'm going to want my bulkhead at 8 feet, because I see it coming, so I might as well do that now, but I want a pool, and our ordinance says you add the 30 inches.
That's my question.
I
Why
think I-
would
I
we?
think-
Well, what would we do with that?
I think a matter of policy, regardless if it's 6.2 now or 8 later or 7.5, wherever you end up, I think the good planning policy is to make sure that you don't have any decks or structures above 30 inches and that offset, whatever offset you decide, whether it's 5, 10, or 15 feet.
And I think I hear what you're saying is, how do we memorialize that here and now? Right? Am I hearing this right?
Yes. Yes.
Well,
Right?
Can,
But if-
can the ordinance just state that it's 30 inches above the 6 point?
Well, if we're talking two separate things, we're talking
Right.
bulkhead height, and then we're talking, in that offset, things above grade. So I think where in your ordinance you have that ability to allow decks, steps, et cetera, to be above 30 inches, you need to change that ordinance to say at grade.
Well, at bulkhead height, because you
Yeah,
want,
the
you want
ordinance
the
says
pool to be able to
bulkhead
come to bulkhead height. You
Right,
want that
wh-
pool to
right.
be able to sit seamless
Whether,
there.
right, so if it's 6.2, 7.5, or 8, you want to make sure that that 15, 5 feet, whatever that distance is, the new bulkhead offset, everything's flat, so that the neighbor doesn't have to walk out to the bulkhead and have to do this, look down and see the water.
In answer to your question, I think, I don't know, but
Well, Josie's nodding her head. You understand exactly what I'm saying.
if somebody puts in a pool now and can
Yes.
go 30 inches above a 6'2" bulkhead, then when he puts in an 8-foot bulkhead, he's going to be up there even with it, which is.
No, what I'm saying, I buy a house tomorrow with a bulkhead that's 6.2, let's just say I do, or even, let's just say 5.5. And I'm going to bring it up to 8 because I see 8 coming, and I want a pool. Is that going to allow me to do?
The ordinance is passed.
You can't.
Right,
So anybody who's trying to think in advance, they can't.
they can't, not yet.
But how far are we from that ordinance change?
How far are we from
How far
getting to
from
8
that
feet?
ordinance change?
Yeah, because I'd hate to
We
see
are-
somebody coming in the next couple months and building to 6.2 when we have the opportunity to go to
We wanna
8.
When they're going to have to go to 8 in October.
I'd rather see us figure out what that 30
Right.
inches above the
Right.
6.2 is and put that in an ordinance.
But what the
Whether
mayor's,
it's-
Right.
what the mayor's saying is valid, though, because let's just say you do enact the ordinance at 8, and the neighbor is at 5.5, so you're gonna be at 8, then you're adding another 30 inches on top of that. You're
Right,
gonna
but
have a 4.5,
what we're
5-foot
saying
wall,
is we want to
unless-
structure it so that it can't go higher than whatever,
Than the
30
8.
inches above 6.2.
Current.
So you need to do
So
that.
however you want,
concurrently.
whatever the wording is for that.
Right.
But then when we change it, we'll have to change it again.
So you have to do that concurrently with your bulkhead ordinance to
But
avoid that
if you change it to
situation.
8, they won't allow them to go above.
That's right.
They won't allow them to go above the 8 then.
I think we've got some unanswered questions.
Okay.
If they change it to 8, if we change it to 8, then you're not going to allow the 30 inches. Is that correct?
That's
Correct.
correct. That's gonna be part and parcel of that ordinance when it comes down the pike, is you don't wanna allow for that extra 30 inches when we put that. That's gotta be part and parcel of the 8-inch or
gotta run
8-foot
tandem.
bulkhead height mandate. Now, conceivably, if somebody has 6'2" now, we give them 30 inches now, they're gonna be just above that 8 feet. So are we okay with that if it's
Yeah, well, like
8
I said,
feet
6
too?
inches or whatever.
Right,
and
so
that works out.
if you're okay with that, and you're not concerned that everybody be right at 8, but then we can proceed with this ordinance now. But if you're concerned with everyone being exactly at 8, then it has to be regulated additionally at this point to limit any new pool to come in, not be above elevation 8.
Just like the dining.
But
Yes, I'm going to, at the risk of being annoying, I think that we have to get a couple of questions answered, so we can take it, but we'll keep beating it to death a little bit. We've got planning board and flood meetings coming up in the next couple of weeks, and we'll bring it back, and hopefully it'll be ironed out at
I
that
think we
point.
all know where we want to be, we just.
Right, but we're not there now, so,
language.
all right.
Right.
Yes,
It needs to be flogged a little longer.
yes.
VCOM,
Okay, VCOM, this is a proposal that Mark had recommended to us. If you remember, VCOM was working with Avalon on the Verizon nodes, and they've kind of stalled, so Mark felt that it's in our best interest to enter into an agreement with VCOM to pick up where we left off and come up with recommendations on what type of agreement restrictions we want to put out there for Verizon. So I would recommend that we, at the council meeting, that you authorize to enter into the contract with them.
and that would be for the next council meeting. That's not, or is that on the agenda for today?
I think
it's
Sue
under
put it as a
possible.
possible for this meeting. Yeah.
Possible, it says.
Everything's
Yes.
possible.
I think the sooner the better. If you're comfortable, I'd like to see you move it forward. If not, it can wait 2 weeks, but
I think we've talked about this for a while.
Verizon,
See any reason
Verizon,
we can't go
I
forward
think
with it.
calls Mark
Okay,
at least once a week
okay.
on it.
Okay, any discussion on that, VCOM? Moving on then to,
Is that, I'm sorry, I'm drifting off,
believe
I'm
him?
drifting off into other things. What, so,
Focus.
this VCOM thing is like a consulting contract?
Correct.
That's all it is. It's not,
Yes,
okay, we're just going to use our expertise to give us advice on
yes.
how to handle this node issue. Okay, because the way it was first written, it was about, it was like VCOM and the nodes, like,
No.
we're not there yet. Okay, all right, I understand.
This is 2 seconds, I hope,
what are we on?
or unless you want to do it at the meeting.
Oh, the beach use
wetlands-
request for the wetlands.
Yes, the dates are there. They start January, February, they start soon. Everyone has a copy of this. This is so that the wetlands can use the beach on those dates for their stewards and their sort of educational class programs run by the Wetlands Institute. We've done it for many years.
So the one thing that we had discussed at the agenda meeting is making it a special events application, just so it goes through the chain, like other things, and also that we see insured,
Okay,
that
so
there's an insurance certificate for the dates.
that's fine. So this goes to Jill, Jill goes to them.
Yep,
Comes back to us.
comes back to us next week,
By
2
the
weeks,
next
2 weeks.
meeting, because
Yep.
this is the first meeting of,
Yeah,
May.
then comes back to us in 2 weeks.
Yes.
and the beach dates.
2018 Utility and Road Program.
Okay. I gave everyone an updated list. We discussed this in Public Works Committee and in the Utility Committee, and we've come up with 11, technically 11 streets, projects that we would like to do. The estimated construction costs are a little over 2.9 million, engineering 235,000, and construction phase engineering 138,000, for a total project cost of 3,277,000. I'd like Mark, if he could, to explain a little bit of what, something new that we're adding into the engineering costs moving forward.
Okay. So this is something that we've deliberated with Grant and Public Works, and it relates to as-builting. in your GIS. So we want to kind of take you to a new level of that kind of as-builting.
Mark, is your microphone on?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
What we're proposing to do here, as part of every capital project, is to actually do an as-built during the project. That could go as crazy as taking photographs of every single water service, sewer service that was, installed, date it, tagged it, and have it uploaded into your GIS system, on the assumption that Public Works will be upgrading their system where they can actually take a shot on these items. We can actually tag photographs, so in the future, they could go back, look at a service, see that the service was installed, what it looked like, the materials, et cetera, as well as when they connect sewer and water in intersections to see how those connections were made. So GIS, as you may be aware, is a very powerful tool, and I think I guess it was the South Jersey gas issue that happened at 94th Street made me think, how do we take you guys to the next level of as-builting and GIS? So that's also included in the proposal, to take photographs of all the services, the connections. I believe that the borough may be buying new equipment possibly and doing the actual data collection. So you could go as crazy as taking 1 million shots on the street, and we would help process those points, tag those photographs. We could even tag videos as well. So you can actually see what was in the ground while the work was being done. So when you come back to it years later, you can see
We
it.
got pictures.
Yep.
Which I think this is an excellent idea. It'll give us a lot of information moving forward, a lot of knowledge that as people move on, the information is still here. It's just a matter of clicking in a certain site, and you'll be able to see exactly what was done over the years. So I think this is,
And to my knowledge, I don't think, you might be
Yeah.
a trailblazer on this one, so.
yeah, I think so.
Okay. Any discussion on that, on being a trailblazer?
Are there any grants out there for trailblazers?
We'll get T-shirts.
Not sure, but we'll look into it.
So, if you want me, do you want me to go over the list of the streets that we're actually proposing to do, or are you guys comfortable with it?
I just see 108th Street there, which makes me happy.
106 makes me happy.
Yes, this is 108th Street, the beach block.
That's just
The 108th Street from Second to Third.
Second to third is the
We've-
one that has the north side.
Yes, we've pulled that out of this only for two reasons. One, we don't feel that we need to replace all of the infrastructure in the ground, and we are in negotiations with South Jersey Gas to hopefully have them do the second half of this road, because as you know, one half has already been paved. So we're in negotiations with them and hopeful that they will cover the additional cost. If not, then we can,
And Grant can go see Phyllis and explain it to her.
yeah.
So Jill authorized me today to make them an offer they
And
can't
some other
refuse.
people there. Yeah.
Yes.
whom I
You know, what
recommend.
jumped out at me was that I think that 50% of the streets we're doing are beach blocks. Is that, I don't drive down beach blocks except for one, so I mean, we have a lot of bad beach blocks, I guess, that are all torn up? Yeah, great.
Grant can explain that.
Most of the beach blocks have 1.5 to 2 inch lines running up them, which means that there's not a lot of water pressure on those going to the beach blocks. Plus, we have to put yard hydrants in order to flush those lines because they're stagnant during the winter months, and we don't have them there now. So they are a priority. We're getting larger houses,
Okay.
small lines, collapsing sewers, so
Got it. Thank you.
that's the reason why they were picked.
Thanks. And are we going to do, I know, I've heard it talked about in the past, these permeable paving surfaces, permeable road tops that fit in with the long-range flood mitigation effort to disperse water? Or is that part of this or not?
That's new news to me, but if
Well, no, I'm not saying it's supposed to be, but we have talked about that. It's come up before, and I just don't know whether we're moving in that direction, or
You
is that a lot more expensive?
We are going to look at any areas that we can do those types of things, and also any type of increased drainage improvements moving forward with all these projects. So the answer is yes,
The answer
if
is
we
no.
can.
It's no then on your cost estimates. Right.
No,
And no,
it-
I'm not throwing darts. I'm just trying to
Yes,
figure out if
we-
we're doing it or
I would
not.
say-
The estimates were traditional hot mix asphalt
Okay.
roadway surfaces. But if the borough would like to look at that, we can look at that with you as well.
Yeah, I think we do.
You have to understand that when you do a permeable surface, you also have to have subsurfaces in order to collect that material. And then to dissipate it into the ground. You can't just put a permeable surface, just like we tried to do at the tennis court for the bike path initiative. We had talked to them about putting permeable surface there, but you have to do something underneath that surface in order to collect that water
So it's
dispersed.
much more involved. It's not
It
just
is,
the
there's a
material.
lot, it's a lot more expensive. In the areas we're working in right now, especially with those beach blocks and down there on 92nd Street, the 92nd? Yeah, 92nd Street. Those areas, we can't do, we don't need to do the beach blocks because we're already collecting all that stormwater and taking it out to the bay. On 97th Street and at 83rd Street. They're dry areas. They're not going to be there won't be an effective reason to do it there. In some of the areas further down towards the bird sanctuary in the south end, yes, I would consider doing it there.
I mean, we could look at doing some recharge on the beach
Right.
blocks, which gets you the same effect, just like the phase.
But the areas we're looking at doing, we've already gotten that taken care of with the Phase 1 outfall. So,
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it.
Anything else? That's the last item we have for discussion. Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We're adjourned. Take about 3